Hey y'all, it's Dr. Reagan, and welcome back to Crown Talks, your weekly dose of health and healing in Black communities, where we clear up myths about Black health and break down the healthcare questions you wish you'd asked and the ish they should have told you. Because we're about to be Black, healthy, and crowned. So I'm super excited for today's episode, and you'll notice that I did not say in 10 minutes or less, because there's no way we're getting through this in 10 minutes. But it is June, so it's Men's Health Month, and we want to make sure that we put out something really great for our Black men, right? And we know that over the course of the last few years, I feel like a lot has happened around Black men's health and really trying to get Black men to go get their regular checkups, their annual checkups, prostate exams, everything Black male and health, right? But today we want to talk about Black men's mental health. And while there has been a lot of push in that arena too, I think there's a few things that we maybe can kind of address today. So today we have Mr. Rick Harrell, who is a licensed clinical counselor here in Memphis, Tennessee area. And I'm so excited to have you join us today.
Thank you, Dr. Reagan, for having me. I'm excited about being here and especially talking about this subject. This is something I love talking about and do on a daily basis. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
And needed, right? So let's jump straight into the rundown with Reagan. What's a myth you want to bust about Black mental health for Black men?
Oh, there are so many myths. I've heard, I think I've heard them all, but I don't know. I've done this work for over 25 years. And so I've heard so many myths. But one of the major, a few of the just common myths that you hear about men's mental health or getting any kind of mental health services is um, that if you are seeking therapy from a mental health provider, then that means you have a lack of faith. I know religious communities we get quite a bit that there's a lack of faith, not enough belief in God that God can heal. You probably even hear that in terms of I've even heard that even in religious communities as relates to physical health and medical prayer. You don't you have a prayer life is not maybe is where it needs to be. And then if the stigmas of mental health is related to men, especially, um, we hear that if you seek help, then you're weak. You are, for some reason, you're not mentally and emotionally strong to handle certain pressures of life. And so there are so many stigmas. I think we're beginning to uh, dispel a lot of these stigmas in terms of mental health now, where people are seeing that it's really okay to seek help and that it's important that we be mentally, physically, and spiritually healthy when we're talking about holistic care. And so those are just a few of them, but there are many, many that still exist.
Exactly. And I really love the one you said about religion, because I feel like particularly in the Bible Belt, we see that a lot of people thinking that just pray about it or just pray about it. We're gonna get into why and what are some other things you can do. We're not saying don't pray about it. Or I'm not saying don't pray about it.
Absolutely.
Just it's sometimes you need a little bit, you need prayer and okay. How do racism, generational trauma, that kind of thing shape mental health experience of Black men?
Oh, great question, Dr. Reagan. These questions you got to know, let your audience know that these are not questions that you prepared before. So uh, these are some great questions, but questions I've heard before. I think there's a lot of history that comes along with mental health, especially in as relates in the Black community. Things that Black people have in fact dealt with. We go back to slavery. Right today, we're celebrating Juneteenth today, and there are a lot of traumas that exist in Black communities, and as it relates to even Black men, especially that we've dealt with in the past, and we still deal with today. I think when we look at how even in the mental health field, let me just be real honest about that. We have there's a lot of racism that takes place in terms of access to care. I think you probably see that in the medical field as well. Access to care and affordability as well.
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
we get misdiagnosed quite a bit as relates to certain mental disorders, and I think it's many times intentional, but also I think many times um, in other cultures, cultures are different, and many times we're not understood in terms of some of the needs that we have as relates to our mental health. So racism plays a big part of it
Mhm.
through the history of mental health. We go back to Sigmund Freud and some of the godfathers of psychology, Sigmund Freud, Sir Francis Galton, and some of these people. They were racist.
Yep. Yep.
They in fact believed, like I think Sir Francis Galton believed in the whole ideology of eugenics, and that black people were in fact inferior biologically, and Sigmund Freud took on some of those same ideas as well. And so we still see that today. That and doing this work as long as I've done it, I've seen it. I've seen it amongst in various areas I've worked in, whether it's been in psychiatric hospitals or in government. I worked in prisons. Um, how care and access to care is acquired is definitely, you see that there's uh, a a, uh, a systematic uh, systems of racism that takes place.
That's a really good point. And actually, one of the questions that I had was, I think people are often misdiagnosed too, but what are some common either misdiagnosed mental health issues for Black men or common undiagnosed mental health issues for Black men?
I think, yeah, great question. I think one of the things that we see, first of all, I think we get misdiagnosed in so many ways because I would say, Dr. Reagan, that mental health looks differently in Black communities than it may look in other cultures. It just does.
Mm-hmm.
We have to deal with so many other things. Okay, we have to deal with so many other pressures. I just, it's a fact. Um, um, we have a lot of the pressures that other cultures and races don't have, especially dominant. Don't.
Right.
That in itself affects our mental health. Um, we have to be. I think my parents kind of raised my sister and I to, to from the perspective that you're going to have to be three times better than your white counterparts just to, in fact, compete in this society. That's a mental um, health situation that had to be put in place to where you have to understand that you got to be three times better than just be able to compete. And I've lived it. I've lived it. I've had to be three times better than my counterparts when I was in graduate school because I went to a predominantly white school. I was the only black male in my whole graduate program, and you see a lot of it in those settings. So when we look at being misdiagnosed, I think one of the common areas or diagnosis that not just black men get, black boys get is ADHD, very overdiagnosed uh, disorder. When I say overdiagnosed, when I first came into the field of mental health, it was called ADD, attention.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, a lot of stuff has to do with politics as well. And so, um, pharmaceutical companies said, wait a minute, because they found out that you can really treat ADD, somebody who just can't pay attention, you can treat that through therapy alone without medication. Well, a big pharma says, no, wait a minute now, y'all got to change that because you cut our profit. We've been giving these kids Ritalin all this time. Now you telling me therapy can we've seen research where therapy can treat this? No, no. So we're gonna change the diagnosis to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They have the kind of what they call the hyperactivity that's inactive, and they have the active, which says a persons don't have to be necessarily hyper, and they want to be non-hyper. But anyway, the hyperactivity gives it a twist to where medication has to come in place. And so, getting back to your the original question, understanding that that particular diagnosis, I think, is way over diagnosed. I see a lot of our black boys especially get it diagnosed with this and labeled as being a behavior problem
Yep.
because they can't stay in the seat, they can't pay attention, or they're not paying attention. Not they can't, they're not paying attention, they're not staying in the seat. A lot of it has to do with a lot of other things, like I said, there are a lot of other traumas that our kids are living in, and that
Right.
has a part to play in why they can't pay attention in school. Um, uh, or just to be honest with you, uh, we have some sorry educators too that just can't educate very well, so you don't keep a child's attention, and that's a whole another podcast in itself. Uh, so there are a lot of factors that involve. We just want to get the kid the diagnosis. And even though it's gotten so overdiagnosed, where teachers are just telling parents, "I think your kid needs to be on medication. I think he has ADHD," and they get that stuff confirmed through a mental health provider that does not necessarily look like myself, and it's a quick fix. So now he's a zombie in class. He's standing in the seat, but he's
Right.
just
And their academic performance does not improve because they've just become a zombie. But I did see recently that they're trying to recommend that for boys in general, not just black boys, but boys in general, to not start kindergarten until 6. And that's actually something that I have been thinking, even for my own child, just they are not ready for school. And part of it is just immaturity. But you're right, that's a whole nother podcast. But that's a good one. I think that undiagnosed ADHD or misdiagnosed ADHD is huge in the black community because it almost kind of funnels the school to prison pipeline that we hear about so much.
it absolutely does.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Now, I also think that folks think because they're able to work every day, pay bills, they get married, they're out here dating, they can't be depressed because I'm doing everything that everybody else is doing. So, how does depression look versus how we think depression looks?
Well, you look when you diagnose depression. Okay, I think depression is one of the diagnoses. I think you have to when we go back to the diagnostic statistical manual that we use to diagnose these disorders. We have to make sure that the person meets the criteria outlined in the under that particular diagnosis. One of the things as relates to many times people don't know that they're depressed because, as you said, they're functioning every day.
Hmm.
And just like you can be a functioning alcoholic, you can be a functioning depressed person as well. Okay, so just because you're functioning does not mean that you're not depressed, because depression looks a lot of different ways. Of course, some of the common symptoms of depression, we know a person is having feelings of worthlessness. You may have um, um, increased appetite, low appetite. We may not able to concentrate on things, not finding pleasure in the things that once brought you pleasure.
Hmm.
In the bed, sleep, have long interrupted sleep patterns or long sleep patterns. So all those things can be can be symptoms of depression. But in order to be clinically be diagnosed with clinical depression, you have to be able to exhibit these symptoms daily for 2 weeks or more consistently. Some
Okay.
people think that they're depressed just because they're sad today. If I'm sad today because something's happened and I'm happy tomorrow, and then now you're not depressed. I was at a church one day, Dr. Reagan was doing a seminar on depression. The young lady got up. God said sometimes in religious communities they do not they refuse to try to understand um, um, mental health because some people still have the mindset that you can just pray these things away. And then lady
Right.
told, well, I Googled depression. I Googled it and it gave me all these symptoms. And please believe that everything we see in Google is not true and correct. So, but she Googled depression and she had all these symptoms. And she said, and I just thought about the goodness of God and my depression just went away. No, lady, you were not clinically depressed. That's depression. You may be sad,
Yeah.
but you were not clinically depressed. You don't just and I am a religious man. I'm a man of faith, but I understand that you're not clinically depressed, and you can just have some oil put on you. The pastor can pray for you, and or give you a prayer cloth or whatever, and it's just gonna go away. That's not how that works. Do I believe in miracles? Yes, I do. I am a miracle. I'm a walking miracle. I'm not supposed to be here today, so I believe that there are miracles. But we can't dispel those kind of myths about things like depression. Depression, anxiety is very real,
Yeah.
and so depression can look like this. Some people think it's all about being in this doom and gloom type of state. I know I was depressed. My appetite was good. I used to be a depressed individual. When I lost my brother, my father, and my brother, and my father, in an automobile accident, my depression went like this. I ate every day, went to work every day, did took care of my business like I needed to take care of my business, paid my bills, all those things. But I was a very angry man.
Mm.
So sometimes depression can be exhibited not just taken on inwardly, it can be exhibited outwardly through anger. Anger was a form of depression for me. And so did not realize that because I just thought, I just wasn't gonna take no crap off of folks. It wasn't that. Nobody would be around me because I had not dealt with the trauma of
Mm-hmm.
grief of losing a brother and father who I love dearly, but it was exhibited through in an outward manner where it was projected on the other people.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think that's what people don't tend to see. And that was actually one of my other questions, like questions that folks maybe wish they had asked their provider is it normal to feel numb, angry, irritable, or get really busy and start working out a lot, or whatever you do? It like how are those? Is that normal versus instead of like this feeling of sad?
mhm. Oh, and rephrase, ask the question again, Doctor. I think
So, like, is it normal to feel numb or angry or irritable, or maybe even positive symptoms? Like you may do something that you enjoy doing, but you overdo it. Are those symptoms instead of just feeling sad?
especially in situations where like I just explained, when we're talking about grief. Now we know
Yeah.
depression can come along in a lot of different ways and come from type of some traumatic situation have taken place, and people will over engage to numb the feeling because I don't want to feel. You have two types of emotions,
Yeah.
what we call primary emotions and secondary emotions. The secondary emotion of anger is what I was exhibiting. The secondary emotion of anger and hostility and rage, what it does, it masks my primary emotions of hurt,
Mm.
disappointment,
Mhm.
frustration. All those are the primary emotions because when we spin off when we talk about hurt, I was hurt when I lost my brother and father. I was disappointed. I was so I let the anger. I was also mad and angry, and so I let the anger. Anger is the emotion. The secondary emotions are our emotions that mask what we really feel. And when we really deal with the real feelings, the core feelings of what's going on, which we don't want to deal with because it's not comfortable. And when it's not comfortable, what I do is I'll mask it by over engaging in other things. Sometimes the things I may be engaged in may be good, but over engaging in it may be not good for me, depending
Right.
on what it is. And then you'll find sometimes people engage in behaviors that are not very healthy. So, yes. So mask when we choose to bury our primary emotions and not allow ourselves to in fact feel those emotions when we're in situations where I tell my clients that dealing with grief issues, I need you to feel the numb. I need you to feel the disappointment, the hurt, the betrayal, the these primary this whole list of primary emotions. You need to feel those things. This is where we're going to find the healing. You will never
Right.
find secondary emotions.
Mhm. Now, speaking of emotions, because emotions make you cry sometimes.
Yeah.
Why black men? Tune in next week where we get the conclusion of this episode and you can hear the answer to the question. Now you know you need to cry.